Migrating to Australia, special news update edition. I'm your newsreader, big square-jawed idiot man, Grant Williams. How are you, Dave? There's my. Could I get a job on Channel 7?
I think you get a job on Channel 7. Absolutely. Good to see you, Grant. And I'm seeing you because we're on video.
In the news today, something about cricket, something about football, something about motor racing, and some other stuff about economy. Isn't that how it goes?
But no, look, you know what? Interesting news today, and we're running a special podcast just to talk about it. It's good for some, and unfortunately others miss out. Press release out today that the government is going to enact whatever the verb is for regulation. They're going to change the regulations to allow.
Let me interrupt you because I want to introduce the press.
You introduce the press release.
The media release.
You can really tell we're winging it here.
No. We really need to look. Someone's got to have a discussion with the minister about his title. His
title's fantastic.
It's the Honourable Alan Tudge, MP, and he is the Minister for Population, Cities and Urban Infrastructure, Acting Minister for Immigration, Citizenship, Migration Services, and Multicultural Affairs.
I'd like to see that printed on his business card.
When that would have just been the Minister for Immigration, or even going further back, the Minister for Multicultural Affairs,
Al Grasby.
But instead, now his title takes 3 lines on the letterhead, plus his name.
A very busy man, spread very thin. Today it's good news for some, not so good for others. COVID has forced a lot of people COVID's locked a lot of people out of the country. Families have been split apart. Partners have been split apart. Those who've managed to come back in are happy. There's still plenty of people locked out, and they're not going to be so happy with today's announcements. What's basically happened from today, Grant, regulations will be changed in the new year so that those who are on 300 visas here, prospective marriage visas here, those who are on 309 visas, offshore spousal visas, those who are on child 101 visas, adoption visas, 102 visas, and dependent child visas will be able to lodge their application, or will be able to have their visa granted, have it progress through the system without having to leave the country. A lot of people are here on visitor visas, and if they've come on a visitor visa while their visa offshore is being processed, they don't have to leave. Prime example is the 309 visa. You and I have talked about the 309 visa before. We've done 1 or 2 podcasts on partner visas, and the 309 100 visa is a double visa to get somebody who's a partner, de facto married, on to from the United Kingdom, from an offshore location to Australia.
But let's be clear, when you said visitor visa, you were talking about colloquially using the term
visitor visa, a 600 visa.
Because the 600 visa isn't in this list that you've just given.
No, what it is, what they're doing, the Australian government's being very fair to people who are here. A lot of people are here on 600 visas because there's no way for them to leave, no way for them to access their home country. Now, a lot of people,
Spanish pizza restaurant worker in Adelaide.
I think is he still? Is this fair to him? Is he? They're not very fair to him at all. Is he still around?
Now that's an in-joke. There's been a COVID outbreak in Adelaide, in South Australia, and in our political culture and in our media environment, you have to have someone to blame. So of course it was the Spanish guy on a temporary visa who was working in a pizza parlor. The only person that they've identified through this whole event in Australia.
Finger pointing is so destructive and so damaging. And once the finger's pointed, it sticks.
Yeah.
What's happening?
No need.
No need for it whatsoever. What's happening, Grant, is that people who are here will be able to stay here when normally, for their visa to be granted, they have to leave the country. So basically, people who've come to see their husband or wife or partner or fiance while their visa's been processed offshore and have got stuck here don't have to leave because they can't leave. They don't have to leave, and their visa that would normally be granted offshore will be granted onshore because January, February next year, administratively, it will be allowed, it will be permitted. So that saves people who are together from parting and then having to cope with flight out and then getting a flight back and then quarantine. So it has benefits for the country in the sense that the quarantine system will not be overburdened by returnees. It keeps people who are COVID safe from being exposed to virus when they travel and bringing it back when they return.
And I think we should really emphasise the point that this is not for new applicants.
Not at all. For people who've got visas in the system.
Yeah,
the 309 visa, the 300 visa.
Key phrase seems to me that it's to provide visa holders flexibility to remain in Australia or to continue their visa pathway, even if they have been unable to travel during the current border restrictions. So you need to be in the system, taking advantage of the 309, the 300, the 101, the 102, or have a child on a 445. So,
you know who miss out? Do you know who miss out? Grandparents, parents, the contributory parent visa, the 143 visa. That's an oversight. Whether that will be remedied early in the new year remains to be seen. But there are a lot of.
Do you think? Well, I think that's logical.
Well, they're more vulnerable. They're a more vulnerable community. They're older parents of Australian PR, Australian citizens who are here on visitor visas. If they go back to their home country in the Middle East, in South America, in Southeast Asia, they potentially expose themselves and they're in a vulnerable cohort. So it would make sense to include them as well, wouldn't it?
Well, you know me, David. Either it's a massive oversight from the minister who needs.
I think it's a huge oversight.
The minister who needs 3 lines to put his title on his letterhead, or they mean it.
Because, well, the thing is, the
people are more likely to end up in our hospitals if we have another break.
So why wouldn't we keep them here if they're COVID safe here? Why would we send them back to their home country, expose them to the virus, and then bring them back?
Would we bring them back? Once they're out, we don't have to let them back in.
But they leave for their visa to be granted.
Yeah, but the discretion there is, you're coming from a high COVID country.
But if they've taken the money, they've taken the government fee, and they've been given a month to leave, and then 3 or 4 days later they're supposed to grant the visa. It'd be unconscionable conduct on the government's behalf not to grant the visa.
Yeah, it would be unconscionable conduct, wouldn't it?
How's that for Mother Nature? Unconscionable.
This would be the government who's known about war crimes in Afghanistan for 10 years and tried to cover it up. Unconscionable.
Frightening. That's frightening. Yeah. We won't go there. I mean, it is good for those who are here, but it's no good for those who are waiting offshore patiently and haven't been able to get to Australia because they're coming from a country or they're of an age or of a cohort that's deemed to be an unacceptable risk for a visitor visa.
And the other thing that was positive in this press release, David, is that these changes are in addition to the decision to almost double the number of partner visa places in 2020-21. Now, we've got 6 months to run of that doubling, and the amount of people who are travelling in the first half of 2021 taking advantage of the partner visa is likely to be small. So
to travel, well, no one can leave the country unless they have express permission and specific purpose.
But even if they were coming from a country that doesn't have people not being allowed to come in, not being allowed to leave, there's bugger all flights anyway, and good luck.
There is correct. So, and if you want a flight, you've got to fork out for business class, and that's like 3-4 times what it costs, 4 times, 5 times what it costs for an economy ticket.
So I think
People,
there's a red flag there for partner visas in that there's no finish date or anything on this condition because of the fact that we don't know what's going to happen with COVID. But they've specifically not said that the partner visa quota will be extended past mid-21, the increase. So,
well, there's a mini budget in May as well. So, I mean, things are subject to change potentially there as well.
see, one of the things I'm a bit suspicious of, and look, I'm not putting my tinfoil hat on here, but we're a big country with a spread out population, and managing rapid vaccination of the population is going to be a challenge. And I just don't think they're going to want extra people here while they're trying to do that. We're going to be only going to be a handful of countries that get almost universal vaccination within 12 months. So we're going to be in an extraordinarily fortunate position once the vaccines are here. But then the discretion about who comes in is going to get really, really tight.
Oh, absolutely. I don't imagine we'll have many of our North American brethren in the numbers that we've had in the past, because
watch the exemptions fly. Marky Mark.
You think? You think so? Oh, yeah, of course. People who are bringing business to the country in the form of commerce, art, cinema, music. Yeah, different exemptions for them. Absolutely. Who came in the other day up on the Gold Coast for a film?
Well, Marky Mark.
Oh, it was Mark Wahlberg. Yeah.
Funky bunch.
And didn't
you might know him as Planet of the Earth actor Mark Wahlberg, but I know him as older brother of Donnie Wahlberg.
Of Donnie Wahlberg.
Mark of the Funky Bunch, mate. That's his moment.
What was their big song? I can't even remember.
I can't even remember the song, but it was a ridiculous film clip. He was wearing overalls and one shoulder was undone, and
the hardest working man in Hollywood. From boy band to the hardest working actor in Hollywood. He's I saw him in a movie doing one arm chin ups. And I struggle to do two arm
Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights. What a great moment for Mark Wahlberg. So
he's prolific in his work, but no, there's always going to be exceptions. You're right. I think it'd be nice to see some bubbles with some of the Southeast Asian countries, because they've handled it better than, or just as well as we have. Taiwan, Vietnam, New Zealand, of course. Thailand's done well too. But basically, the people from today's announcement who miss out, well, there's no light for them, none at all, and we don't know when they'll be allowed to come in. Probably when a vaccine is, is introduced.
We'll have to have universal coverage. It won't just be when the vaccine is here. It'll be probably after the 7 or 8 months it's taken to vaccinate pretty much everyone in Australia. And there was a really interesting piece of research out today. I don't know if you saw it in the conversation on their website. No. There's been some modelling done about how to vaccinate the entire population in Victoria.
How long in the conversation article do they talk about how long the process would take?
It's a matter of months. But it's dependent on a whole lot of things, because we don't know which vaccines are going to be, which one's going to be available. But they need cold storage vehicles to move them around. You can't just throw an esky in and put them in a car and move them around. and the thing is, they're going to have to be distributed to GPs all over the country, and then people who've got excess stock are then going to have to move them on to people who don't have enough, because of course the study didn't know what the customer knockers for doctors were. They just looked at the spatial geographic distribution.
Well, far north coast of New South Wales, we can leave out. They're not interested.
Yeah. When you start to think about that, and the government has promised us it's going to be free, Now, the rapidity of the deployment of the vaccine is going to be a very high cost activity,
Yeah.
and uh, and vehicles is certainly going to be a limiting factor.
Mm,
So
absolutely.
so yeah, they might say, well, look, we'll just take all the food trucks, and then everyone go, hang on, how am I going to get my food from the supermarket?
Lindsay Fox might win the major project, major freight forwarding project, and distribute it through his extensive Linfox network.
Well, I'm sure it'll either be that Paul, what's his name, that you'd know, the doo-doo wrecked Essendon from
Yeah.
the toll guy.
Was it Paul Little? Paul Little?
Yeah, it'll be one of them. No one else will get a look in.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I mean, what it all goes to show is how migration is still and will continue to be a movable feast for quite some time yet.
Yeah,
Quite some time yet.
And look, dear listener, if you're listening, because it's going to be so limited, David and I are probably going to have more comedy shows like this to keep things going, because once they set the restrictions, when a vaccine date is known, I think they're going to be really, really tight, and the indication from that is, yeah, we've let 70 international students have arrived in Darwin.
And that's it.
They start arriving today.
The South Australian poll was it's been abandoned. The trial for South Australia.
That's been scrapped because they've had 20 something cases of COVID in South Australia. So if we're going to abandon international students coming in when there's a group of 20 COVID cases, we can basically say no one's coming until we're immunised, because Melbourne's going to start having international travellers returning, Australians and
flights are back on one week from now on the 7th.
Yeah. So there's going to be COVID coming back in the community. That's just, there's just no such thing as zero risk in a pandemic. So it doesn't matter where they quarantine people. You know, there's someone died in Victoria. It was announced today, died a few days ago, but contracted COVID in July and had been cleared. COVID damaged them so much that they died from something else, but they're still marked as a COVID casualty. So it's why we don't want COVID coming in, because when you're 70 and you're frail, you're at risk.
So you and I are about sort of 19 and 16 years from that. So we're gentlemen in our early 50s. Let's just say that. In the course of all of this, though, Grant, we call it as we see it, and the government has been, from my perspective in immigration, very fair to those who are trapped here.
Yeah,
they've been very fair. The department has been very fair.
Yeah, the immigration side of the government has been, in terms of how they're handling visas. But we've
absolutely.
Before, international students have been relying on charities to eat.
Terribly sad that the government hasn't found some way to financially provide assistance at a federal level.
And I worry that there's going to be some medium to long-term damage to our reputation amongst the international student market, because because we've said to the people that are here, we said two things. We said, get out, but if you can't get out, tough luck. So I think
it's terribly sad, because we're big fans on the Migrating to Australia podcast of international students. They bring energy, they bring hunger, they bring intellect, and they help to make Australia great when they transition from temporary to permanent residence.
Third or fourth biggest industry for Australia.
Massive industry. Massive industry.
I'm not hearing anyone being so openly offensive from government to iron ore buyers, or I'm not hearing anyone say, "Oh, get out."
Absolutely.
So I think that was a real mistake. Some state governments have done brilliantly doing what
Yeah,
they can. But
let's reach out to Craig Foster and get him to tell us about his efforts with international students up in New South Wales, because he's been fantastic, a spokesperson for them, a champion for them at grassroots level.
And I think we should probably have a word to Sally Cap if we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, didn't the Melbourne City Council provide a relief fund and cash grants?
They did, and the Victorian government topped it up, which was good. Similar things have happened all over the country, but of course, where were the biggest cohorts of international students? And it was Sydney and Melbourne.
Sydney and Melbourne, and right here, Melbourne and Sydney.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, if you're an international student and you're migrating here, they're the places to go. So, we've let them collectively. We've let them down.
And there's competing interests. I think we probably should sort of tease out what is happening here. Is that when people are arriving, so they're Australian citizens or people with PR coming back from overseas,
or members of the family unit of an Australian PR or Australian citizen.
That's right. So then what's happening is they're going to state government allocated hotels to be quarantined. And that's where we've had the issue in Melbourne with the virus escaping from hotel quarantine. And that was with some contracted security staff who were working other jobs and were frankly not trained well enough in the hygiene aspects, in the transmission of disease aspect. So that was a fiasco, and Melbourne hasn't been taking international arrivals. That's about to start again, but everyone who comes in goes into nominated hotels for their quarantine. That means that a whole lot of capacity for
excuse me,
what those hotels we usually use for, those people have had to go into other accommodation. So people who are having Victorians who might come to Melbourne to do something and want to stay overnight, they can't stay overnight in the hotel they usually would have. Now they're filling up the Airbnbs and things like that. So the sort of accommodation that international students would have filled up is now being used for other things because we're using all the hotels for quarantine. And of course, a hotel that's being used for quarantine that might have been able to have 5,000 guests a night is only having half of that or less because of the transmission factor. They were having every second floor was being utilized and things like that. Just to keep the mixing down. So it's really complex. It doesn't sound complex when they talk about it on the news.
No,
but you can't build a hotel in a week.
And what it means too, though, is that for our wonderful education sector, God knows when it's going to get up and running fully. I've spoken to people and they're hoping mid-year, but do you foresee that? I think that's wishful thinking.
I can't see it because I don't think that. Look, I don't think the vaccinations will be widespread enough, not only in Australia, but in the countries where people are coming from. Qantas have already said you won't be able to get on one of our planes if you are not vaccinated. So if that's the policy, how do we get people in from Thailand, from Bangladesh, from India? How do they get
without a vaccine? They don't. Without a vaccine, they don't.
We're going to have a policy where it's no jab, no fly. So
yeah, that's right.
And there's a whole lot of issues that countries have to sort out amongst themselves. Are we going to allow if we're allowing Qantas and let's say Virgin do it too?
Yeah.
To say if you're an Australian, you can't fly back to Australia on Qantas if you don't have a vaccination. We can hardly say to Air India that you can bring plane loads here a week and they're not vaccinated. We can't. You just can't. I don't think the community will cop that. If the community are prepared to accept that Qantas can tell us rather than the Department of Health what our vaccination status must be to get on a plane, I can't imagine that we're going to say, yeah, no worries, come on Air Vietnam or Air India or South African Airlines or whatever it is and arrive here without a jab. I just can't see that being allowed.
No, I tend to agree with you on that point. And it's a real shame because I don't know if you've been in the city lately, but it's robbed of its dynamic nature with the absence of international students. I mean, they bring a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, a good vibe. I mean, have you been into town lately? No.
Yeah, I have, and
We miss the international students.
well, it's we've heard this so often before that it's been a weird year and things are different and we got to go towards COVID normal. The simple fact is it's going to be a couple of years until any of the cities that we know, if they are managing COVID, will be the way they were. I had a friend of mine from the Philippines sent me a video of their market the other day.
Deserted.
No, not at all. Just like nothing had happened.
Nothing had happened.
They're not in lockdown. They can't sustain a lockdown. They can't economically. They can't sustain a lockdown, which means they can't control the virus. It's a double-edged sword. You can't lock down because your community is going to riot because they can't eat,
can't live.
Yep. So it's a double-edged sword. I mean, it's a time where all of us in the Western world, be it Europe or be it in South Africa, be it in North America, be it in New Zealand, we're a very very lucky place, isolated by geography. Look what's happened in Japan. They thought they had it all under control, and they're
wave number 3, third wave. Yeah,
they're a bunch of islands, and
yeah,
it's an extremely difficult thing for any of us to deal with, and I don't know if it came across how difficult it was for us in our podcasts while we were locked down. It was challenging, but I'll tell you what, it's a lot harder being in a country where you can't find food and your house is a box with a tarpaulin over it. So
it's been destroyed. It's been destroyed by a cyclone or a hurricane,
or a typhoon
or high tidal wave. Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
So
and also we access to clean water, sanitation, adequate medical treatment is not there. We get all of that, and they don't. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
and wasn't it one stage we were talking in a recent podcast? The Philippines had been hit by 2 or 3 typhoons.
Yep. Yeah, typhoon season. Yeah.
But in the space of a matter of days.
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned it on air. Certainly, we've been talking about it off air. I mean, I've been helping some friends who, I think it was 5 days between typhoons for a friend of mine, where I helped them rebuild their house basically, and then did a good job rebuilding their house. But then all
wasn't
their
destroyed.
Got smashed. So,
wasn't destroyed again with the second typhoon, was it?
No, but their neighbours were. And then you sort of feel bad and think, look, we can't fix all the world's problems, but geez, such a small amount of investment from the rich world would make such a big difference to
absolutely
the poorer world. But David, we probably need to be a bit more upbeat.
We were going to talk about how to open a business and run a business in Australia as a temporary migrant or a permanent migrant or an Australian citizen when you get the urge to no longer work for the man and create your own shop. That was the original subject. We'll get that one. We'll get that one coming up. That's what we were going to talk about today, and that would have been pretty upbeat. But people have come to the end of a very difficult year. There are students still studying online, and we've got to respect them, tip our hat to them for their tenacity and their capacity to stay here. We don't know the full consequences of what they've sacrificed to be here. So we need to talk, and I think we might sort of chase Craig Foster and get him to give us some on-the-ground tales of how hard people have been doing it up in Sydney who have elected to stay.
I might put my reporter hat on. This is my podcasting hat, not my reporter hat.
You need a pork pie with a little press badge.
Yeah, with a little. Yeah. I might bring around and get some, unattributed comments from some of the educational institutions about what they suspect might happen in 2021, because that sector is going to be really badly hit. We've already had massive job cuts in that sector, and that's another
Correct.
thing. How quickly can they bounce back?
Correct.
If the staff have gone and got jobs making coffee in Queensland,
Exactly. Absolutely right.
So, it's mate, the new normal. The new normal, David.
The new normal
Chaos
takes
is the new normal.
takes some getting used to, Grant. I tell you that.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Is there anything else we need to cover?
No, not really. I mean, I do feel for those today's announcement. I do feel for parents offshore who've been waiting 4.5, sometimes close to 5 years for their 143 contributory parent visa to be granted. This provides no relief. Would have been lovely if.
And even if it said that those timelines would be frozen, like the process would be frozen, but because there's time limits on all of these processes, and as you said, the contributory parent visa is missed out.
Absolutely.
Would have
And
been
it,
nice
and
if
it
they just put a
would have been.
pause if they had said from March, we're going to go back and we're going to put a pause on it from March.
I
And
just wish.
we'll set the stopwatch again when everything opens up. But
I wish everybody who was. There are a lot of people onshore who've come to see their kids who are adults and their grandkids, and they've been trapped here. And it's time for them to be leaving, but there's no provision for them to stay from today's announcement. None.
and as we've sort of said in a roundabout way, if you can't get a flight out, you can't leave.
Can't get a flight out, you can't leave. So they'll get another visitor visa. People will be able to get visitor visas to stay here until they can leave, or their visa is administratively changed so that it can be granted onshore instead of offshore. Yeah. But it didn't happen with a 143 visa today, and it's a real oversight. I think it's a big oversight.
And that's right. And if you are on a visitor visa, you have
can't work
applying for some other classes of visas.
Depends. Yeah, I mean, they've been very generous with people who've been trapped here, irrespective of the country they've come from. Treated everybody equally when they don't always treat everybody equally. We'll have to do a podcast on that one day, I think. How people from certain countries get preference over people from other countries. It's an unfortunate reality, but they've treated everybody equally, and as they should, because this is a pandemic affecting everybody. Well, people will be able to stay here until they can leave.
We'd need some data for that podcast to be anything more than
anecdotal,
than me saying, "Isn't it terrible what they do?" and you saying, "Well, yeah, I've seen these cases," but we need some hard data.
The power of anecdote backed up with data.
Yeah, well, there's nothing more powerful than a data-driven anecdote.
We might get a bull back on. He's a whiz, a genius with the data.
He's the data dude.
He's the king.
He's the migrating to Australia data dude.
we've got a few honorary members, haven't we?
We need a segment, the data dude.
We need to get. I mean, I wonder how our wonderful education agent is going up in Queensland. I wonder how our wonderful private school owner is going. Well, I know he's going well. He's going well, which is good because he runs a beautiful school. It's an ethical school, well-run school. So more power to him. It's interesting. People we've had
and our underbelly legal. Charlie, he always does well. He'll survive. And I might put that up again because you know what, people still need to remember how to deal with the police, and it's quite useful. So I think we should put that up again, recirculate that one. It's a good one. Yeah, well, you mentioned our education agent friend and our private education provider.
He's doing very well, and he runs a great school in Melbourne and Sydney, and he is providing a valuable service to those who want diploma level education.
Yeah, we'll have to Well, I mean, we're brainstorming in a podcast, which is extremely unprofessional of us. So it's Banny. You can kick us again, mate, if you like. But
we had one plan, but we're unable to contact our guest, and we hope our guest is all right. But we'll get that guest back.
But how do people like Laura, our education agent friend, and Gil, our education provider, how do they adapt? Like we're coming into this being a 12-month phenomenon and then stretching into a second year. Will it be affecting them for a third year?
It won't affect somebody like Gil, because Gil is a very smart. Gil's a fully trained lawyer, fully trained accountant, a very smart man, and a very good businessman. And he provides his college provides services to locals as well.
But there's the thing, isn't it, David? The pivot. And
that's right. The pivot.
Once you've pivoted out of one market, it's very difficult to easily swing back.
Correct.
Yeah, we should get them both on and have a bit of a and have a call in, have people calling in with questions. How good would that be?
Who was that?
Banny. We'll get
Banny. But somebody trolled us when we were doing the record. Nobody watches us when we record it, but everybody listens post when it's up on Apple and Spotify. But who was the guy who was trolling us? Remember when we were recording and we got those messages?
He said something very rude.
Yeah, he was very naughty. Very naughty.
And I was automatically reading out the comments. Luckily, I stopped on that one. Look, David, people do watch us when I promote it in advance, but I haven't been promoting it in advance because it's very hard to feel motivated at this time.
Immigration's a movable feast, and this has been a very long year to begin with as well. It's been a very long year. Yeah. I mean, we've got a couple more podcasts before the year is up, and we've got a couple on the can, so people will be entertained and enlightened over the break.
I've got no doubt that there'll be some migration, some visa news that happens in the traditionally dead time.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt.
I'm sure they'll put the rubbish out in January.
Without a doubt, absolutely, 100%.
So we'll probably have some very topical things to talk about. We just might not be able to find any guests because they'll have escaped the lockdown. The lockdown cities, and they will be as far away from technology as possible, I would imagine.
Oh, I think we all deserve some form of break this year, because even though we've been homebound, it's been pretty intense.
Yeah, it has been. But again, I never want to overstate our experience compared to what.
Oh, never. Oh God.
Countries in
apples and oranges. I mean, if you look at what's happened in as you said in the Philippines, what's happened in Nigeria. I mean, Nigeria's had political problems as well.
Well, look at Britain, mate.
Mm. Yeah, we won't say anything about the to and froms, roaming slang poms.
I mean, I'm not trying to be political here. It's just that we've just come out of a long lockdown. You know, we did, the best part of 4 months in a
easy
hard lockdown. I think maybe
easy
in a hard lockdown, and to think people in Britain, they're trying the thing that didn't work for us in our first lockdown, which was the postcode method, where you have this region, you have this restriction, this other region, you have a different one. That didn't work, and they're only just trying that now in England because they don't want to do the hard lockdown because it's really hard.
Oh, it is.
But I just.
And I mean, did you ever? I mean, I live on a major road, one of the major roads in Melbourne, and I'd step out at 9 o'clock at night.
You go out and play football on
the
main road.
No noise, nothing, dead,
Yeah.
extraordinary, not a sound.
been amazing. I did speak. Look, we're way off topic here. So if
you're not listening, I don't blame you.
Drop off, just but we can share our a bit of lockdown experience. I was speaking to a friend where I, prior to lockdown, went every morning to go and have a coffee.
Yeah.
And since we've been allowed to go out again, I've only been up there twice, but I spoke to them the other day.
Yeah.
And they because they had no trade, they joined one of the delivery apps and adapted.
And how they gone? It's been a boom.
It's been a massive boon for.
Good on them.
They can't actually keep up with some stock items, and because the app is so new, they've got no historical data to sort of work out what they're going to need tomorrow.
Yeah.
So because they can't overbuy, because they're still out of having no trade for so many
years. Of course.
So they're still trying to balance that, but at the same time, because so many people on the app want to use it and want to buy menu items, they're having to say out of stock. Sorry. So you've got dissatisfaction with new customers going, oh, these people have never got what I want. And on the other side, it's been a godsend for them, because they can sell stuff to people who can't get outside, or opened up to a whole new market for them. So
there's a guy who will get onto the program, onto the podcast, who's a French baker who has pivoted during lockdown and been marketing on Instagram his very special Japanese style sourdough bread, and he has gone, like the people who run the cafe, massive. He's gone great guns, and the story is that he can't keep up with the demand either. And I said to him, hello, Quentin, or as we Aussies might say, Quentin. Your bread is beautiful, and it's chocopan.
Quanton. What have you done? You've muted yourself, David.
What happens? Well, on StreamYard, the phone overrides StreamYard. So I just got a late night call.
Someone's ringing you up.
Might be time to wrap it up then.
Yeah, it's Benny's tracked you down, and he wants to have a word about
it. Benny's like,
worst episode ever.
Worst 0 stars.
Actually, I think I forwarded them on to you. We've had 2 recent.
Fantastic. No, you have to forward them to me. That's fantastic.
One of them was in Australia. One of them was elsewhere. One of them just said, "It's great. Help me get a job." And So, and the other one was just 5 stars, saying that we were always entertaining and informative. Hopefully, we're informative and sometimes a bit entertaining. I don't want to become the Hamish and Andy of immigration. We
do have one thing in common with them.
Stern of hard-hitting immigration.
No, Hamish and Andy and David and Grant have one thing in common. We're all good-looking dudes.
Yeah.
I saw Hamish on a tram once. He's got spectacular bone structure, and I've been on a plane. Which one went out with Megan Gale? Hamish or Andy?
That was Andy.
Andy. I sat next to Andy on a plane, and I was ready to.
He's about 6'50".
No, Hamish is, Andy went out with Megan Gale. I tried to speak to Hamish on the plane, but he put his mask on and went to sleep. I probably put him to sleep.
He's the one doing the tourism ads at the moment on the telly.
And Hamish, and Andy's the big tall one, yeah.
Yeah.
And he was on the tram, and he's very, very polite and well mannered.
Yeah, he's a nice boy. He went to a nice school like you, David.
Oh, where did he go?
I'm not sure, but no one speaks like him. No one speaks like him and didn't go to a nice school like you.
Well, I don't speak like this anymore. With my surname that ends in a vowel, I should speak like this. No, I love my WOG brethren. Next week, we'll get on to opening a business in Australia and what you've got to look out for, the business plan, the marketing plan, licensing, registration, costs. And we'll speak to somebody about why so many businesses fail.
That will follow on with an arc where we've got an episode about to come out about investing in Victoria in particular, but similar themes are out there for investing wherever you might choose.
Absolutely. Podcasts for those who want to start a business and those already established business people.
And we didn't really talk about it, but after what we've been talking about today, it's a really good time if you are offshore. It's a great time to save some money and then take the opportunity when things do open up, because you can bet your life we'll be screaming for international money.
Absolutely. And if you're a young person thinking about studying in Australia when the gates do open and you do want to come and study in Australia, I stand by. Not studying accounting, not studying law.
Or childcare.
Or childcare.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And let's be clear, that's not early childhood education. That's childcare.
Okay. Which is different to going to uni, doing a bachelor's degree in pre-primary or a master's degree in pre-primary. Very different. Less rigorous, less onerous, but a pathway to nowhere. If you haven't, if you're lost in that, look on our index where we do a podcast on the dangers of childcare. Don't do what we say in the headline, don't we?
Yeah. Don't do childcare. Don't do care. David, you know what I feel like now after how we've done this episode?
Just put it up live and see what happens.
No, it's like when there's world's craziest drivers or something like that. Right? or recently we've had this on one of my favorite shows here in Australia, Highway Patrol, and then when they've run out of ideas or they haven't been able to shoot for any reason, they have Highway Patrol, worst of the worst. Like the top 10. So it's like, let's just cut up what we've already done and put it out again.
It's not bad. It's good repurposing of content, isn't it? Do you like those marketing words? Repurposing of content.
Exactly right. It's like the Elton John Christmas album or the Elvis was the master of this. Elvis was the master of that.
That's it.
Find an album. Hey, can we get 3 of the shit albums we did?
Oh, now we'll have to cut it out. We'll have to edit it out.
Yeah.
We'll be crucified in India.
All right, I've marked it. I know where it is.
Banned in India, banned in the United States.
Hey, Colonel, we are gonna, those 15 shit albums I did 10 years ago.
Oh, mark that at 4740. Make that one as well. Oh, we're going to put an end to this podcast, I
think. Take 2 songs off each and call it Christmas with Elvis.
This is the only semi-expurgated podcast.
That reminds me of that classic Monty Python routine. The expurgated version. I was going to show Dom on the Christmas holidays. He's 12 now, or 13 soon. The Life of Brian. I think I saw it when I was 13. So, how old were you when you saw it? You would have been 17. No. You've got to do it in the right order. You have to do the Holy Grail.
I was 11. It was 12. Yeah, it was released in 1980. Yeah.
Yeah, but you've got to do it in order. You've got to show him the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
So that he gets used to the physical humor where the king and the knights are moving from one castle to the other. You must know this scene.
I haven't seen the film for about 20 years.
There's people who are doing this in a line with all the banners, and you've got these guys going. That's the horses. So you got to get used to the physical comedy.
That's it.
Then you go to Life of Brian.
Yeah.
And then you do The Meaning of Life.
God, I haven't seen those films. I haven't literally not seen those films in 20 years. More.
The Life of
Brian. He's not the Messiah.
Brian,
he's just a naughty little boy. That's right.
Life of Brian gets better every time you see it, and as does The Meaning of Life. There are so many there are so many jokes in The Meaning of Life that Dom will never get, and that you will get them all. And
Didn't Life of Brian screen at the Russell Street cinemas for like 18 months? It was a record in Australia. It went on and on and on.
Well, it was like I'm not sure if it was at the Russell Street, but it certainly had a continual screening in Melbourne for forever.
18 months, I think. I remember it went over a year. I think it went for 18 months. It was at the Russell Street cinemas. My favourite cinemas in there. What are they now? They're a pub. All right.
And they're still a favourite of all the art house cinemas like the Astor and Valhalla and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, and look, for migration people, if you don't know anything about Monty Python, sorry. Sorry.
I think people stopped listening at about 20-minute mark.
There'll be the hardcore. Look, it's Benny's going to give us a review saying, "Oh, you're not film critics, you bloody idiots."
Well, I was Benny.
Yeah,
From 18 to 26, I actually was. My last job before I went back to law school, I wrote for the Herald Sun, a short but illustrious career. I mean, I wrote for a couple of other newspapers, but the Belle Epoque was 3 months at the Herald Sun before I got sacked.
And if you are interested in David's journalistic career and his film reviews, go back to the very first episode where we did. I think I've titled it "Who is David Bongiorno?" and we talked about when you interviewed Patrick Stewart.
Fantastic, erudite, articulate, very intelligent man.
So, and there are links to some of David's finest journalistic moments. I did pick out some of his great reviews.
They live. That's it. They live in Trove forever. The Canberra Times was one of the papers I contributed to for a number of years, and Trove, they're still there. They're still there.
So
nothing from the Courier Mail remains, and nothing from the Herald Sun remains. But you can still see what I did for the Canberra Times. Got a soft spot for that paper.
So if you don't feel like you've wasted enough time,
dive into Trove. You'll never get out.
Follow up David's film reviews, and the interesting thing about your film reviews, David, I'm sure that if I went and found a film reviewer from the 70s, you just substitute the film name, and it all makes sense. And
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of that period, and heavily influenced in film writing and film theory and film appreciation because it was the golden era of cinema. The golden era.
Oh, David, I forgot.
What did you forget, Grant?
Valet Maradona.
Don't. You start me cry. You have me crying again.
Yeah, that's what
you have me crying again. Thursday, 5 a.m. I got a text. I got a text from a mate in Italy, and that was the beginning of 24 hours of mourning.
Yeah,
I wore shorts into the office on Thursday, so people could see my Maradona tattoo on my right leg.
I'm going to say something controversial.
What's that?
He's a cheat.
But he absolved himself. Diego Maradona scored the Hand of God goal, and 4 minutes later absolved himself when he beat 7 of the English team to score the greatest goal in the history of world football.
Yeah, that was amazing, wasn't it? They played
total absolution. Total absolution.
Over and over.
A hipster. I was having coffee outside the office, and a hipster came up. He had wet eyes. He'd been crying. He said, "Can I take a photo?" I said, "Of course you can take a photo." And then we fist pumped in solidarity at the loss of Maradona. Greatest footballer ever.
Went to his grave denying that he cheated. Just said he was cunning.
That's it. Cunning.
And crafty.
Maybe we could say it was revenge for the Falklands sinking of the Belgrano. Argentina didn't distinguish themselves in the war. They distinguished themselves on the pitch. Maybe.
When you go back and look at the timeline, it was only, 4 or 5 months after.
4 years. It was only 4 years after the Belgrano. Belgrano was sunk in May of 2002 and World Cup was in 2006, June, July. 86.
But I think it was only a matter of months after the formal cessation of hostilities, like when all the documents have been signed and normalisation of.
Oh yeah. It was revenge. It's got to be viewed in the prism of revenge, and they did it, and they did it very well. They beat an incredibly talented English team, very talented English team with a great Bobby Robson coaching, and it was a one-man band, really. It was Budel Chaga, but it was Maradona. Maradona won that 86 World Cup.
So this has been migrating to Australia, the Sports Hour.
Great. We'll talk purely migration next week.
Join us again next week when we talk about Burundi's chance in the Africa Cup of Nations.
Have a good week, mate.
See you later, mate.
Ciao.